our second last preseason strategy episode for 2026. Yeah, basically in the single digit countdown of your AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach preseason. So much has happened over the last week with the community series, so much about to land with opening round, and lots to unpack with our second last preseason strategy episode. Joining me on this episode, as he has right throughout the preseason, he's had an incredible preseason. I know as you've been watching and listening, you've been getting so much out of not only the strategy conversations, but the 50 most relevant, the mini series reviews, and everything we've been doing right since we've started dropping content in the preseason. MiniMonk, nice to have you up on the podcast. And we're just over a week away from the first of our rolling lockouts.
We are indeed. And we're only 4 or 5 days away from the actual live event as well. We've got to plug that right at the start here so people can remember it. And we'll both be there in person for it. And so I can't wait for that. But we're getting towards the end of the preseason now as well. We're only, just over a week and a bit away. We've got opening round games just around the corner, starting on Thursday night. Starting to get some leaks about some debuting rookies. I'm excited. It's that time of year again.
Oh, mate, it is. Hey, by the way, Sunday night is our first ever live show. MiniMonk's talked about it. There's still room for you, so you can absolutely get in. Tickets are $30. You can still get them on the day, but trust me, you don't want to miss out. Inside that $30, your first drink on the tab, absolutely taken care of, and some great content creators are joining us. From the SuperCoach Swordplay podcast, DR, he's going to be there. A ton of stuff. He's a part of the live show. Pommy from the Pommy and Oz YouTube channel, he's going to be there. MiniMonk has a few special things lined up, including an AFL Fantasy team reveal. You have no idea, friends, the amount of bribery it's taken, not only to get him down to Melbourne, but far out for him to just open up the AFL Fantasy team. I need a gold medal for the amount of bribery I've done. So we've got that. I know the Centre Bounce boys have already signed up. They're going to be there. It's going to be so much fun. You could come after the F1 if you want to, because the podcast live show starts at 5:30. Then stick around and watch the Magpies and the Saints game with us. $30, first drink on the bar. It's going to be a great night. It is a gathering of the coaches panel and the fantasy footy community that has never been done before. We want to have you there. Come on down, brag about your Shiva draft afterwards. I know Ryan from Keeper is going to be coming down as well. It's going to be an awesome night. Friends, we do not want to miss you. All the details, if you want to get your tickets, are in the description of this episode. Hey, Mini, let's talk preseason, because with the community series, and there are reviews on this channel, you can go and check out every single match if you'd like a bit more in-depth analysis. But not only do we make a bunch of changes to our side as a result, some good, some poor, we tell ourselves some narratives, we tell ourselves some truths that justify why we faded off a player and moved on to another. I'm curious, are there just some false flag narratives that either you once have believed or you're hearing inside the community that you just want to call out to actually challenge that maybe that statement, that thought process, that ideology actually has got some leaky holes in it that we want to make sure we're not getting tripped and trapped on before we head into round one? Are there any preseason false narratives that you've seen or that you have once believed in?
I don't want to be too much of this narrative is completely false or this narrative is completely true, because I want people to be able to make their own decisions based off of what they've seen, what they've heard other podcasters potentially saying, whether or not they agree with them. But I would challenge anyone who's listening to have a look at what kind of preconceived notions they've gone into a particular game that they're watching and how that may have affected how they view a particular event. So, for example, someone like Sam Walsh in that first game against the Cats, in the first 5 minutes, he goes down into the rooms, he's sore in his back, and then he comes back up and he pops out a 100 AFL fantasy score and 133 SuperCoach. So if you were anti-Sam Walsh going into that game, you'd say, oh, he's an injury risk player. It's just a matter of time. I don't want to pick him because it's just going to go badly. But if you were a Sam Walsh, haver and wanting to see the positive out, you go, yeah, he's had that and he still managed to come out with a 130. And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle of that. But this is the sort of, tossing and weighing up that we need to be considering about every single player that we're considering, and also about, a team's potential game style, a team's potential debut times in terms of how well they might be able to score. it's always worth trying to take a step back, try and come back at it with a nice impartial view in order to be able to generate some of your own thoughts with regards to it and not just regurgitate what other people might be saying online, and try not to take any preconceived biases into these decisions that you're making. But there is one that I do want to really hone in on, because I think this is a very interesting discussion. And this is probably one where I think I might be disagreeing with a lot of the community, but I'm genuinely starting to get more and more worried about not necessarily the number of rookies that we might get at the start of the season, but the potential quality of these rookies. We've seen players like Jax at Western Bulldogs, like Grill at Richmond, Dirksen scores well. We've got Robertson, who has an okay game for 3 quarters and then smashes out of the park in the last quarter. Outside of, maybe Jagger Smith and maybe a Lockie McAndrew for those that are looking to run him at an R2 or a flex position in SuperCoach, the quality of rookies is starting to get a little bit dicey. I don't know how you feel about this heading into the start of the season at this point.
Look, it's pretty normal to most times of the year that we get, and again, every year is different, but we head into the community series with a great sense of optimism. We see all these rookies getting named, and then we actually get to see them in either a little bit more of a heat in the kitchen type of lineup or a few more of the best 22, best 23. We see the structures, a little bit more elements, and we fade ourselves. And even a player like a Farrow at Essendon, I think a lot of people heading into the community series would have felt really, not just optimistic, confident that he is a fieldable defender or mid-rook option. And yet they come off that game and going, great ball user. Oh, I can see exactly why Essendon love this guy as a player. Oh, but inside that ecosystem, inside that ball movement, and then I start to figure and factor in who was missing in that side, I start to cool. And so I'm not panicked or reactionary or worried by it, but I do look at it and go, I don't think there's more than 5 across the formats, because again, there's different formats. Filippo's a rookie in one format, he's not in the other. So excluding him, I don't think there's more than 5 rooks that I'd go, he's on my field. Yeah, I feel okay about that. Even with best 18, not far around the corner. I guess off the back of that, if value informs our structure, is it the mid-price value or is it the rookie price that informs our structure? Because again, you can argue both, and I don't think either's flawed. What for you is more defining the number of rooks you should be putting on field that informs your structure, or where the value in that mid-range kind of holds?
It's definitely the number of rooks to start off with in terms of how many you want to field. But then it also has to be factored into, how many mid prices are actually available and how well are they going to be able to score, how well are they going to be able to outperform their price point, and how much value is in them. I think that I like to look at what rookies I want to start on field. And, I listed those 2 initially. You've listed probably another one in Filippo, who I think in SuperCoach is almost a guaranteed on field. I would say that Dev Rob is probably close to that, given the role that we saw and the fact that he played what I would say is a relatively poor game for 3 quarters and still managed to scrape a very respectable score in both formats. And, I reckon some rotation of a Lindsay, a Grill, a Jax, a Dirksen, if we get him for round 1 in your D6 spot's probably okay, but I wouldn't want to be fielding more than a couple of them. And that starts to, once you get to that point, once you start to say, this is where I'm starting to get comfortable, you need to fill the rest of your team in somehow. And if it's not with the rookies, you've only got so much cash to splash. Eventually, it's going to have to be the mid prices. And so I think that that's where I think the rookies define the initial decision, and then you get the mid prices defining, right, well, what's the balance between premiums and mid prices as I start to come into my quote unquote team for round 1.
Yeah, I want to ask you a bit more about mid prices, but in terms of like that structuring up element, and again, we do need to unpack opening round. We do need to unpack the early buy selections and our squad balances in the mix of all of that. But how do you go and make that discerning decision between those structural pieces? Is it because, again, in the first 5 weeks of the year, we've only got one that 22 of our 23 count, and then we're into scores hopefully falling away and largely on those rookie types. So when it comes to just round one and those scoring elements, how much are you either concerned or influenced is maybe a better word for it? How much are you influenced by that round one? Because your rookies arguably over a 6 to 8 week period of time, yes, I dodged that number in the middle on purpose, are going to make the most amount of money for you on the premise of health, fitness, roll cadence, all those things. So the argument could very easily come, more rookies is better for a higher increase of cash generation over an 8 week period. And as a result, I should have more rookies inside of my side because they're going to generate more money than the mid prices. What's either a validation or a challenge to that thought process for the community?
Well, that's a lot of where the guns and rookies style approach initially came from. You know, it was a combination of that associated with limited trades that led towards that school of thinking. And as we've, you know, gone further and further away from that, we've started to be more and more aggressive with the value that we're trying to hunt. We're trying to find mid prices almost at every single team, every single position, every single price point in fantasy and supercoach that we can in order to squeeze every inch of cash out. But the basis of the argument is correct. If you have a rookie that is priced at, you know, 22 or 20 or whatever it is across the formats, depending on whether they're an elevated price or not, and they do like a 60 as a baseline scoring, they do that for 8 weeks, they're going to generate a lot of cash for you. But the issue is they need to do that for 8 weeks. There's no point in picking these rookies that are scoring 40 one week, 60 the next, maybe then dropping a 30. Or even worse, a rookie that plays 2 weeks and then gets dropped and isn't coming back for another 10 weeks because, you know, the reinforcements have come into that team. And that's the beauty of why we've started to move towards mid prices, is we've started to be a bit more aware as a community of how well teams are actually structuring up, how well these rookies have in terms of job security, in terms of role security, in terms of scoring security, to the point where we can say, you know, if I have Jagger Smith and I have him for 8 weeks, I know in AFL Fantasy he's going to go from 230K to 600K because he's that good of a scorer. But if you compare that to someone like Blamiers at North Melbourne, who has come in off of SSP, he might get 2 games and then he might get dropped to VFL to work on some things. He's not used to the system. Yes, he's a bit of a mature ager, but we don't know that. And that's where, say, like a mid-price, you go, well, I'm going to use him as a very particular example here. Harry Ralston, I would expect that he's going to play week in, week out. Whether or not he's going to keep the same role and keep the same scoring every week is a different question. But if he's in that team, at least then you've got a heartbeat that could be generating cash. And if he starts to get a change in role, you can trade him down. And this is where the mid-pricer kind of theory comes from. It's, you know, it's not just about the points on field and the cash generation. It's about the fact that now you've got a green dot. You're not relying on a rookie. You're not going to the team sheets every day and saying, every Thursday and going, oh, I've had 2 players dropped. Oh, I've had 3 players dropped. Oh, I'm going to have to do an adjustment to my trades because I'm all of a sudden short on this particular line. Yeah. So I think that this is where a lot of the conversation around mid-prices has started to, I guess, go the wrong way. Where we've always been looking at it in terms of, you know, we're trying to maximize our team value, yes, but it's not just about that. It's about everything that a mid-pricer can provide you in totality.
Yeah, it's really good. I want to ask you a bit more about mid-prices in a moment, but back to rooks. We talked about there's a handful in almost every, well, in total, let alone in every line that we'd be comfortable to field. Can I give you some names and give you, again, there's opening round, there's players to be named, some are not to be named. There's a bunch of variables that still have to land. And like I said, we're a week and a few days away from the start of the year. So a lot can change in a week. Friends, for example, were not considering an Archie Roberts in their side this time last week, and now they are. They weren't considering a Tanner Bruin seriously inside their side, and now they are. So a week is a long time in preseason. I'm not just saying that as a caveat of a get out of free for mini, but rather to say a lot is going to evolve with the games of football of opening round and which rookies do and don't name. Can I give you a bunch of rookie names and you just tell me whether you'd feel comfortable fielding them or not? And if it's format dependent, then obviously give me that visibility. Let's go defense. Lindsay?
Probably okay with it.
Yep. Gibcus.
No.
Ooh, okay. I know a few super coaches are kind of hoping you might give us something there. Grill.
Depending on the matchup.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Carlton. Sarong.
Depending on how he looks in round 0 or opening round. And
Yeah,
what role he
fair
gets
enough.
given.
Fair. And then the last one I'll kind of throw in, because there is others that I could throw in, but I'm just going to give you a couple. Jacks from the Bulldogs.
This is the one that's giving me the most amount of grief because there is a lot happening in that Western Bulldogs backline between him, a Buderick, and a Bailey Dale to return, let alone the fact that they are trying to keep the Oscar Baker doing roles there, Bailey Williams doing roles there. I don't know how much I can trust Bevo, genuinely. And so my answer is probably no, unless we see something dramatic in round 0 with Bailey Dale playing.
All right, fair enough. Farrow? Ooh, spicy, I like it. Harry Dean. Thank you to everyone that let me know I had an absolute brain fart on social media today. You could tell which Dean I was thinking about. Harry Dean.
Definitely
Interested?
not. Definitely
More interested
not.
in Charlie? No? Okay, fair enough too. And Zeke the Freak, Hewland.
No.
Fieldable.
I'm concerned that he's not even going to be there.
I think I agree with you. All right, let's hit the mids then. Let's go for the easy one. Jagger Smith.
Yes.
Fieldable. Dersma. Is he fieldable?
He's fieldable. I think he has enough of a floor associated with him, but I wouldn't expect that floor to be higher than about a 45.
Okay. Sharp. Is he fieldable?
Yes. But him and Dersma are a couple that I'd want to rotate depending on fixture if you can.
Okay, so not two of. All right, fair enough. Probably could have counted him as a defender, but we'll throw him in here too because he's got dual position status. From the Crows, Charlie Edwards.
This is one that I think you're better to answer because I've still got no idea what is going on at Adelaide and I have no idea how they're going to roll out their round 1 team. So I'm going to say lineup dependent in round 1, but I'm concerned he might not even be there in round 1.
I agree with that. And I think if he gets to round 2, he should be exceptionally happy with himself. He looked fine against the Dockers on the weekend, but they have got basically a third of their team to come back into the side in round 1. It's just not going to happen. We're not going to get this player, but could I ask you, again, hindsight, it tells us the answer is no, but was Schonberg in the mix off the back of what you saw before his injury? Not suspension, sorry, not injury.
Definitely not.
Any other mids that you feel deserve a fieldable shout out?
Carroll and Blamiers. Is it Blamiers? I don't even know how you would pronounce it. I think that's the way I would.
I've heard 3 different pronunciations.
Those are the 2 that are interesting. I've seen a few Pies fans talking about an Angus Anderson. I wouldn't trust it a single bit. I don't think we're going to get Annabelle. So it's really just Carroll and Blamiers. I don't know if either of them are fieldable. I would say if Blamiers gets a good crack at it and we see it for a week or 2, then yes, but it's just scary being an SSP rookie coming in and trusting that on field.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. Rucks, McAndrew, we've had a big conversation about last week. I could jump the gun and say, yes, happy to field him. Nothing's changed about that in the last week.
Not only am I happy to field him, I am still very much on that he should be fielded. He is arguably the second best rookie that we have, and to not field him would be doing your team a disservice in round 1.
Hot take, Mini. Yes. I want to talk Rucks with you about that, both the protection of and the risk profiles and everything that's there. Reedy?
No, not even in SuperCoach.
Not
no, but like genuinely, he's He's playing second Ruckman. He's getting 30% ruck time, and he wins 20% of hitouts and can't follow up with possessions and can only just follow up with tackles. And even then he doesn't stick, 3 in every 4 of them. It's just a no. Like, there's genuinely a chance in AFL Fantasy that he can play a full game and play 80% time on ground and score a 20, and in SuperCoach a 25.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's talk forwards then. Dev Rob, you've already kind of said you can, so happy to tick that one off. Mateus Filippo, we're going to put him as a SuperCoach. Yes, AFL Fantasy doesn't hit the rookie criteria. Different conversation through there. James Leake. No, okay. Can we talk about Pickett?
I mean, what do you want to know? Can you field him?
Is he fieldable? Because I think he's going to play. I'm giving names that I think are going to be in and around the selection options, not just, hey, here's Cody Angro for no reason. And again, no shade on Cody.
Yeah, I think he's going to play, but I wouldn't want to field him, and I'm not sure I even would want to pick him.
Okay, all right. Does a Braden Cook sit in the same Charlie Edwards level of conversation for you, or slightly different to your perspective?
I think there's a bit more to Cook than there is to Edwards. I think he has more of a chance of being able to get in to the Crows 23, more so than I think Edwards does. And I think because of that, maybe, but that Crows fixture to start the year isn't enticing enough to me to be considering him on field.
No, we're talking about forward rooks, or in fact rookies in general. We're happy to field. Not who's on your bench, not do you put them in your 30, not that, but are they fieldable? Lockie Doverston?
Definitely fieldable in the right matchup. He knows how to find the goals, and he knows how to push up the ground and get involved.
Yeah, he does. Malcolm Moses?
Less so. Could be okay. Gonna get tricky on that buy round very, very quickly. Especially because we're also need to be considering the other one who you haven't really asked me about yet in the forward line.
Oh, Ty Gallup.
Ty Gallup, yeah, definitely. That's the one I was thinking of.
Sid Draper?
No.
Toby Murray?
Oh, what's the point?
Go on. You do the
Leo
heavy lifting,
Lombard.
mate. Yes, go on. Tell us about Leo. Is he fieldable?
Given Gold Coast's early fixture, he is absolutely fieldable. And if he pops a 40 or a 50, it's going to happen. If he pops a 30, I expect it might happen. Just pray it's not a single digit score like I have copped before on my forward line from a rookie. That was not fun. But I think that he's a bit better than that. So I think he can at least have a floor of about a 30, 35. And for a small forward rookie, that's not the worst. But if you can loot between him and a Doverston in these rounds 2, 3, or 2 and 4, particularly when, Lombard's actually I think Lombard's on the bye in round 3. That's pretty nice.
Then the last one, there's a few others that could sit in there. There's 2 more actually. Artie Jones at the Doggies.
Interesting one. I like him less than Lombard and Doverston as small forward types, but yeah.
And then one, he's technically a rookie in SuperCoach and he's close in fantasy.
Oh, here we go.
Comparatively to Filippo, who's like 300K. Todd Marshall. Fieldable?
I am growing to this as an option.
Got the power.
And this is a narrative that's come from a lot of places that I'm hearing, and I'm starting to hear it and believe it more myself. I really love to go for these players that are mature ages, that are rookie priced. We talked about a Devrog just before as being one of the fieldable ones. We've talked about a Jagger Smith. Yes, he's had a year in the system. He's coming in a bit cheaper because of that. But someone like a Todd Marshall's had a lot of time in the system. He looked pretty good against a very depleted West Coast. But it's the combination of that plus the fact that the Port Adelaide fixture for the first 5 weeks is really good. He becomes very fieldable in SuperCoach because of intercept marks, and he becomes reasonably fieldable in AFL Fantasy, especially if we start to get towards a point where we're worried about the rookies that we might get come round 1.
Yeah, that's fair. Hey, I'll talk mid prices for you in a sec, but can I ask you one last philosophical question before we move into mid prices, early round options? How we panic or don't panic, and then do want to hit Ruck structures before we end. We talk about SuperCoach and AFL Fantasy being trading games, but over these next 9 to 10 days, we're probably not thinking about what our trades are going to be at the end of round one and what our trades are like at the end of round two. Rather politely, we all think we've got this perfect side and we have hit fantasy football utopia. But the reality is we're going to get halfway through round one and be like, oh, frick. I knew it. Shouldn't have done it. I saw some warning signs and I went there anyway, or I should have backed up that content creator's opinion. Far out, and away we go. So how much in this moment right now should we be still being giving care and attention to our preseason side? Of course, but how much should we be worried about or building contingencies about trades that in 14 days' time, the game won't be able to open up fast enough to be able to boot a bunch of these players out of our sides? Where should and how should, if at all, we be focusing on those first few potential trade options?
I think we need to be aware of like where our trades are likely to happen in these first couple of rounds. Up until about rounds 4 or 5, it's the opportunity to fix any mistakes that you've made, be it you've gotten onto the wrong mid prices, be it there's a premium that's popping off, a rookie that we've missed that suddenly popped a 70 or an 80 and is coming into round 2 or round 3 with a negative break even that you just have to jump on because of the cash they're going to generate. I think that when you start to consider that, then you go back to the step of, where do I see these potential holes being in my team? What players don't I own that I would love to own if they do pop, And a really good example for me is actually a Freo Docker. It's Murphy Reed, because the hard fixture is in round 1 against Geelong. And after that, it gets a lot easier. But I'm not convinced that he's going to be a proven scorer. I think he looked fantastic on the weekend, but I don't know if it'll hold through coming into the early part of the season for various reasons. And so I look at my forward line and say, right, well, we've got a lot of mid prices in and around that 600 to 700K range in AFL Fantasy, be it a Matthias Philippou, be it a Connor McDonald, be it a Joshua Shelley. Chances are not all of them are going to be able to pop off. If I have to go to him, it's from one of these types of players. So if you have a kind of idea in your mind as to these sorts of players that you might want to correct into, be it someone like a Murphy Reed, or be it a Ruckman, or be it a midfielder, and have an idea of what your path might be to them should they pop off, that can help to guide your team structure in terms of what price points you want to target as well. And I think that that's the way that you structure yourself to be able to make the best moves in your opening trades in AFL Fantasy. SuperCoach, it's a bit different because of the fact that the prices don't move and because of the fact that you get the option to boost, which means you can get super aggressive. Someone like a Charlie Curnow comes out on, Thursday or Friday night. I think he plays on Thursday night. And gets 6 goals and pops a 95 SuperCoach and then backs it up in round 1 with another 6 goals. Every man and their dog is going to be moving to get Charlie Curnow. But currently in my mind, I'm not building my team around getting him into my team in SuperCoach. But these are the sorts of things that you need to kind of consider. And this is where we start to see a bit of deviation between the formats in terms of how you trade.
Yeah, it's really good. Can we talk mid prices a little bit more?
Please.
You've already mentioned that rookies inform our structure, and so too does the value of mid prices. The big top line question, I think even the most experienced coaches is pondering somewhere underneath the surface, even if they're not posturing, it is, how many of these suckers can I put in my side? I don't like a definitive number. I feel like that's unfair around it because people are mid-priced for different reasons. It's injury discount, it's roles, they've changed clubs. So not all mid-prices across formats are equal. But is there a risk profile for you in a specific line, let alone across the team, that you feel more confident? For example, if we talk about our forward lines, let's extract Flanders out of this conversation because I feel like he's more that underpriced, likely to become premium forward, given all the variables we've talked a lot about in the preseason. But you throw in the likes of McDonald or a Shelley, a Thomas, a Buderick in some formats, a Philippo in AFL Fantasy. Over in SuperCoach, you start putting the mixes of a De Goey and an Adam Treloar in the mix.
A Fraser,
Do
a
you
Reed.
have...
There's so many.
Right. So many. You genuinely can fill a forward line with mid-price guys without too much panic. And I don't think structurally it's chaos for you. You've got to make some plans and some trades off the back of that. So I guess my question off the back of that, and you could do similar thoughts in the defensive line with Blackiston and Windsor and Coleman. You could do the midfield with Xavier Lindsay. Got him on the podcast. Harry Roust and Tanner Bruin. Like, we could do it in every line if we
Darcy Parish is still a mid-price. Hayden Young in
SuperCoach. So we could fill our sides very comfortably and very easily with this. But does the risk profile start to stack up? Do you start to get too worried when you're like, I've got 3 or 4 in each line? Or is that something that you're like, oh no, I've built that into the way I'm building my starting squad?
I mean, the idea of why, I mean, me personally, why I'm picking mid-prices, and I think that I'm, for those of you who've seen my SuperCoach team reveal that I did with Abs about a couple of days ago, have seen that I was very mid-pricer heavy in my SuperCoach team at this point in the preseason. And spoiler alert, I haven't changed it too much between then and now. Part of the reason why I've gone towards a team that's quite mid-pricer heavy is because I don't have that certainty in these rookies that I'm talking about. And so eventually you have to take a risk somewhere in your team. If you're taking the risk in some of these rookies, be it like a Farrow, be it like a Doveston in your forward line, or, a Blamiers in your midfield, and you're banking on these guys getting multiple games, that's how you're taking the risk profile. It's no different to saying, I'm going to run less rookies, I'm going to run more mid-price, I'm going to take my risk this way. I'm going to take the risk that Tanner Bruin's going to play a halfback role. I'm going to take the risk that Harry Ralston's going to be a 45-50% CBA mid and can score. I'm going to take the risk that Connor McDonald is going to play that hybrid mid-forward role and score well enough to be close enough to that forward line top echelon. We're always taking risks in our starting squad, be it from the premiums we pick, be it from the mid-prices we pick, be it the rookies that we pick. It's about how you balance that risk in your mind. And yes, increasing the number of mid-prices you has means that more likely you're going to have a mid-pricer that fails. But in the same way, increasing the number of rookies that you pick is going to increase the number of rookies that could potentially fail as well. And we don't really talk about that in that same sense because we go, it's a rookie, it's 230K, worst case scenario, they just rot. At least with a mid-pricer, you have the cash to be able to correct with. At least you have the ability to say, you know what, they're not doing the job. I can take them down to X rookie that I've potentially missed. And you know what, there's another one that I've got that's failed. I can take him to the mid-pricer that's popping. The 700K guy, I can go up from a 500K guy to a 700K guy with the extra 200K that I've got from trading this player down and get onto the player that's actually, performing like a premium at a discounted price. So yeah, there's an increased risk, but there's no real change in my mind in terms of the risk profile. I think that it's just how you want to, how you want to slice your cake up. How do you want to figure it out in your team?
I'm very, very comfortable, and especially in AFL Fantasy, right? Every format is different, but in AFL Fantasy, your first 8 to 10 trades, unless you've nailed everything, is either A, correctional, or B, adjusting to get on the money train sharply. So you're getting off okay picks to good kicks. Yep.
Or adjusting your structure.
Correct. Because things have changed and evolved and moved. Either what you've seen, a mistake, an injury, suspension, all those things that kind of happen. Coaches that adjust quickest are the ones that are the most successful. Illustrative point would be Harry Perryman. He comes out of opening round and he validates both in terms of score and in terms of role what we had heard all preseason. And so we as a community 12 months ago lean in to Harry Perryman with great confidence. We get out of round 1 and go, oh, that's a little underwhelming, both in terms of role and in terms of score. Some go, I have seen enough. I am off. and they correct. They go down to one rookie that you've alluded to. They jump up. Maybe the perfect scenario would have been an Isaiah Wanganeen Miller. It would have been the perfect outcome as a result of that. While others sit and go, oh, maybe it was just a matchup. Maybe it's just one more week. And then they get to round 2 and they're like, oh, yeah, but if I don't address that rookie, he's starting to rot. So now I've got to fix it. Actually, yeah, Perryman he only got a quarter of the CBAs are okay for there. He's fine. And now all of a sudden you're at round 5 and you haven't been able to deal with it. And so this is why I do think mid-price madness, for sake of an umbrella phrase, I don't think is that damaging to your risk profile. All you have to do is not blink. You cannot second guess in this range, because that's where it hurts, where you're like, oh no, Bruin didn't, Rouston didn't, Rochelle didn't, Thomas didn't, McDonald didn't, Coleman didn't, Blackiston didn't. And all of a sudden you're like, I'll just give it a week. I'll just give it a week. I'll just give it a week. And then you're in round 6 and you've only now dealt with the issues, because you're like, oh, I could get a 10 points per game better break even if I move Sharp to Grill. So I'll go deal with that and hope that this mid-price, these become the issues to correct, unless there's a burning premium injury, unless there's a burning rookie issue. This is where you're focusing your trades. And I don't think that's a problem, as long as you're building that into your profile of the start of the year.
And it's much easier to be able to commit yourself to fixing these mid-prices if you don't have bad rookies burning a hole in your side as well. If you don't have
Correct.
rookies that are dropped or at that price point where they're starting to, max out in price because they just don't have that scoring potential. And it's much easier to be able to move into, the mid prices that are going up, or even the rookies that you may have missed from these positions, rather than having to sideways someone like, for example, a Farrow to a rookie and then figure out what you're doing with that 30 or 40K that you might have left over. I think that there's structural advantages to both sides of things.
Of
and
course.
you have to play each year on its pros and cons and what we get dealt in terms of value and in terms of rookies. And the way that I'm viewing this year, and I think we are in a very similar vein of how we are viewing the entirety of the year and how we want to structure and how we view the rookies and the mid prices. I think it's a year that we are both pushing towards a structure that is more mid price oriented than I would do in typically previous years.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Can we talk opening round? We're just a few days away at time of recording. Potentially you're already there. I do want to talk options and picks and buys in a second, but last year was really the first significant year we've started to learn how to deal with opening round and trades and movements and things like that. What are the markers that we should be making player changes in our starting squad in both AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach, knowing AFL Fantasy do have the double price movement if they play opening round and round 1, so a 2-for-1 movement, while SuperCoach, they will sit on the bubble at the end of round 1 and have not had their price movement. So different for different formats, for sure. What is a marker or markers that we should be looking at as we watch these handful of games to go, right, this happened, therefore I need to adjust my team, my structure, my player, that selection?
We need to look at role primarily.
Yeah.
And before we even start to look at the score, before we look at, the fixture, what is the role that the player has, If let's say we go to the Thursday night game, we see Isaac Keeney come out and he's gotten 75% CBAs and scored 110. Would you be shocked? No.
Nope.
Would you be shocked if he came out and he got 25% CBAs and kicked 3 goals and scored an 85-90? Probably not.
No.
But if he came out and scored 120 with 5 goals but played 20% mid and 80% forward, would you be picking him for your starting squad? Despite the score, you probably wouldn't. But if he came out and scored 100 but had 80% CBAs, would you be considering him? You probably would.
Yeah.
So this is what it means when it comes to talking about role. Before we even get to the score, before we get to the opponent they're playing against, if they've got the role that we want them to be able to get, to be able to be at least allowing the upside that we think that player may have, that's the first tick. Then if that happens, then you start to look at the score and you consider the score in combination with the opponent. For example, Giants are playing Hawthorn. I don't expect there to be a huge amount of scoring for any of the Giants midfielders in that game, be it someone like a Harvey Thomas who's pushing further up the ground, be it someone like a Harry Ralston who I'm quite interested in getting, maybe only a 70 or a 75. You compare that to someone like the Pies. People are talking about a Josh Dacos, or even I'm seeing a little bit of interest in a Dan Houston. You start to see these defender type players pop off against St Kilda on a big deck. That wouldn't be a surprise. So these are the other things that we need to factor in. I think that's the primary things that we're looking at least for the mid prices and for the premiums. I think for the rookies, it's a little bit more dictated by the score, especially in AFL Fantasy, because that first score is going to drive a significant amount of price movement. It's not going to be as significant as the second and third game, same as in SuperCoach, where those games tend to matter more. But if you see, I think we're all expecting a relatively good score out of Jagger Smith, and I think we're all going to be probably fielding him for the first few weeks, unless he were to do something silly and get suspended, or pray to touch wood he doesn't get injured. But if you see someone like let's use an example. A Lombard. Yeah, let's say a Lombard comes out and scores a 70 against Geelong. Like, that's a massive tick for me to say, you know what, maybe I actually need a field, and maybe I need to restructure so that I can put him on field at least for the couple of games. Maybe I need to shuffle what rookies I'm going to have on my forward bench so that when Lombard is off on his bye, I've got someone who can cover off, or I've got a couple that I can loop between in order to at least try and get a reasonable score out of them. Be it, is there a fringe rookie? Like, we haven't seen to this point in time a Wade Dirksen named as a debutant for Carlton. But if he's named and he goes a 75 against the Swans, and then he gets named in round 1 against Richmond, do you go, maybe I actually want to field him at D6 in this particularly favorable matchup? These are the sorts of things that we need to start considering with regards to rookies. So I think that covers the three main categories of players that we want to consider when it comes to their opening round scores. And there's going to be players that rock up and pop a big score in opening round. We saw it last year with Sam Taylor, and that sort of scoring does obviously tempt, because that break even just goes so low so fast. But we're not in as much of a position in AFL Fantasy to be able to take these players on this year, because if you look at your starting squads as they stand right now before opening round, I think most teams have at least 10 players that have an early bye. As we start to stack more and more of those players that do have early buys on them, the potential for being able to match scores with good teams, let alone match cash generation with good teams, starts to fall away.
Yeah, 100%. And look, we're going to talk about that a lot at the live show on Sunday night. Again, your ticket details, if you're in Melbourne, are in the description of this episode. They're conversations that we promise we will not have on any public forum. So we will maintain a level of bite lip, don't say nothing, nudge, nudge, wink, wink for people. So definitely for Melbourne listeners, get on down and join that, because you're going to get that real, raw, unfiltered reflections on opening round. We'll still certainly touch on it next week, and the players and the structures and the movements, but you get a much bigger deep dive this Sunday at our live show in Melbourne. Can we talk about those opening round players, those picks, those structures, those premiums? What has been your either change in reflections, observations, or just a thought you want to drop out into the community before we look to wrap up this episode?
Well, I think we still need to have a very quick chat about the Rucks after this, but I might start there.
Oh, yeah, we want to hit that too.
Is that the Rucks are very interesting in terms of the very popular Ruckman at this stage of the preseason now in AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach. Tim English is skyrocketing in popularity after his score on the weekend. Brodie Grundy is skyrocketing in popularity after his score on the weekend. Tristan Cherry is dropping through the floor faster than anyone can get rid of him out of his team. But Luke Jackson still remains the most popular Ruckman. So if you are looking to run an English or a Grundy or even a Max Gawn or a Kieran Briggs, if they look good in round 0, or even a Darcy Cameron, have a think about how you might want to structure up your rocks. Whether you want to have a heaven fitter McAndrew at round R3, which we both don't recommend, or if there's another option that might pique your interest, be it in SuperCoach. Do you want to pick a Liam Reedy? Should he play in round 0 and round 1? Do you want to pick a Mitch Edwards? Should he be named for Geelong? Might be worth considering. Do you want to pick a Cooper Duff Tyler? Might be worth considering. But the interesting one that I'm starting to see is the combination of defenders in round 4 and forwards, I think it's in round 3, that are starting to look a bit sketchy for a lot of teams. So in round 3 with that forward line, we've got Gold Coast, Petrarca and Leo Lombard. Western Bulldogs, probably a bit in Fraser, a little bit in a kind of Buderick, in a Cooper Hines. We've got Hawks, you've got Connor McDonald, who is becoming a very popular selection. And we've got Sydney's, who I don't think there's really that much there at the moment. But between those three teams, before that, the Suns, the Dogs, and the Hawks, there might be teams that are looking at 4, 5, maybe even all 6 of those players. And that's where you can get yourself into trouble very quickly. So as much as we might like all of these, mid prices, be it a Fraser, a Connor McDonald, a Connor Buderick, and we might like Christian Petrarca, it is advisable to not pick all of them, especially if we might be relying on someone like a Hines as a rookie in our forward line. And same goes in the defensive line, that I would say what coaches are probably looking at is 4 of the top 7 or 8, maybe even top 6 defenders come from these 2 teams. We've got Nazar Wanganeen-Miller, Jack Sinclair, Lockie Ash, and Lockie Whitfield. I would not be picking more than one of those 4.
Spot on.
That's just
pick your favorite.
Pick your favorite. Pick the one that you want. People are loving Naz. He's very, very popular in SuperCoach and quite popular in AFL Fantasy. But if you just pick one of them, you're okay. But I would not pick a Naz and a Sinclair. I would not pick a Naz and a Lockie Whitfield. Just don't do them in combination. Take one and call it a day.
Yeah. And again, remembering what the other positions you've got to navigate your way through, whether that be a Flanders, a Philippou, a Roust, and all of that kind of stuff. Like, it's all over the squad. Starts to get more rooks on field in coverage. Great. But now that scoring benefit that you're looking for really starts to diminish. Right at the top of the podcast, I let it go. Actually, that's not true. Kind of reacted to it, but then let it go. But want to come around the mountain to this conversation where it was a statement, and poorly paraphrasing you have to start Lockie McAndrew at R2. That's a very bad paraphrase, but I think it captures the sentiment of what you are saying. I know why you're saying that, because you're talking about best scoring rookies with the best job security and the best output in that spot. He and Jago are without doubt in that. I think Fantasy Freako tweeted or posted on X inside the last couple of days, like that hit outs to advantage against Luke Jackson and Mason Cox. Neither are scrubs when it comes to their ruck out work. He was really strong in that spot, and an area the Crows have historically really struggled in. Remembering they had, outside of Dawson and Rochelle, no first line options that were running through that mid. So let's say McAndrew's at R2. What the flip are we doing at R3? Because there's a couple of options. Burn the spot and just use it as a red dot, and we're going to VC loophole our way outside of those best 18 rounds. That's kind of option 1. Hope that another rookie, quote unquote, cheap ruck delivers for us, namely a Reedy or a Cooper Duff-Tytler are the names we're going to as illustrative points. Or we're probably shopping in a weird value space like a Dante Vicentini. Talk me through those 3, and then we will come back to the McAndrew at R3 thought just to round that out. So which of those approaches are valid, and which one are you encouraging the community to consider the most?
I mean, they're all valid. They all work as an option. It's just about what piques your interest the most. I think the red dot is viable, especially if you hit a good VC on particularly the Thursday or the Friday night and you like the player. If I was in AFL Fantasy, I would be looking at someone who might be a bit of a handcuffy type ruckman that could get a bit of a gig. The backup ruckman for Melbourne, Max Heath. If Max Gawn goes down, Heath's going to play. And I think he has ruck forward status as well. So he would be one of the ones I would look at if you're looking to lock in a 230K red dot option. I think in SuperCoach, you can save the 20K if you're wanting to go that way. and go to a Kalani White instead, who also has the ruck forward DPP, but it's definitely a play. The pro is that you can get that VC on the Thursday on round one, and you get that bit of flexibility if you pick someone who's got ruck forward status, and you allow yourself to have that red dot for later on in the season as well. The con is that you're limiting yourself for a spot in terms of cash generation, and you're also potentially limiting yourself in terms of, what you might be able to do later in the track, because I think we're going to get red dots or purple dots or blue dots or whatever you call it. I think they're blue dots for the bye rounds as well for 2, 3, and 4. And I think by the time we get to round 5, we're probably going to have a dead rookie. So that vice captaincy advantage that you might get might only last one round. If we go to the rookies, man, it would be nice if we had one that popped their head up that was actually going to score reasonably. It really would.
Yeah.
I keep tossing and turning on Liam Reedy in SuperCoach, and I look at it, I just don't know if he lasts and if he scores well enough to be worthwhile picking. I think Cooper Duff Tyler will be a slow burn and will make cash eventually, but the elevated price tag just makes it so hard to consider starting him.
Yeah.
He's a consideration for coaches who want to take the punt in terms of that's their way into cash generation. I can understand coaches that want to just go the red dot instead of it, but each their own. But I think the Dante Visentini pathway is R3, and I think this applies to both SuperCoach and AFL Fantasy, and I'm seeing it more in AFL Fantasy, and I'm not seeing it too much in SuperCoach. Having him at R3 is a viable play, and it is a very, very viable play. It's a lot of cash. It's 300K in SuperCoach, and it's about the 550K marker in AFL Fantasy, so he's priced at about that low to mid 50s range. But what he does is he allows you to take on one of these ruckmen that have the early buy, who are the ones that we want to go towards. Bar a Jackson, most coaches are looking towards an English, a Darcy Cameron, a Max Gawn, a Brodie Grundy. Only Max Gawn doesn't have the early buy of those, and he's probably the least owned of those 4. So that allows you to, 1, cover that buy. 2, it also allows you to have security if McAndrew is dropped, heaven forbid. And people might say, well, Sweet might come in for Visentini. It's true. But if you have to get Visentini up to a premium ruckman, it's a lot shorter of a jump compared to getting McAndrew up to a premium ruckman.
It's true.
And 3, the ruck run for Port Adelaide, especially how it pairs in combination to a McAndrew, is utterly filthy. Round 1 is the only round where he's got a bad matchup until round 8. And if you're putting him at round 3, at R3, you don't have to field him in round 1. Round 2, he's got Essendon. McAndrew has Western Bulldogs that week. I don't think I want to field McAndrew that week against Tim English, but I will happily field Visentini against his brother, or against Blackiston, or against Brian, or whichever one it ends up being. Round 3, West Coast. Round 4, Richmond. Round 5, St Kilda. It's a little bit trickier. Guess who McAndrew has that week?
I think he's got Pitternet, doesn't he?
He does have Pitternet. Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. Round 6, Hawthorn, bit of a trickier one. Still a pretty positive matchup. I'd be happy enough to field him. Round 7, Geelong. Who does McAndrew have that week? Brisbane. Straper, it's probably not amazing, but it's not terrible, but he's got Geelong.
Yeah.
They don't like playing
Great
ruckman.
matchup.
And then round 8, they play each other. You just take your pick of who's been form. You might have already shipped one of them by that point.
Right.
But here's the kicker. It also covers you for the week that one of your premium rucks might have a bad matchup or have the bye. So, for example, for those looking at, say, a Darcy Cameron or a Tim English with that,
Brodie Grundy.
or a Brodie Grundy, that round 3 bye, he's got West Coast. McAndrew has Geelong. If you've got a premium ruckman on the round 3 bye, I'd be pretty happy shipping both of them out. And I can tell you what, I think, if you get an 80 out of McAndrew and a 90 out of Visentini that particular round, that's a hell of a lot better than having to field an extra rookie in your midfield. I think it is a live play in terms of covering you for buys, covering you for bad matchups, and for cash generation. I'm very much coming around to the idea of starting him at R3, sorry. And I think coaches should be really starting to look at if they've got a bit of cash left over, if it's a viable play for their teams as well.
I'm as confident that Vicentini is the number. Well, maybe not as confident. I'm close to as confident as McAndrew is the Adelaide Crows' clear number one first choice ruck. I'm as close to, not as, but as close to confident that Vicentini is for Port Adelaide. All the conversation coming out of Port Adelaide ever since Soldo hurt his knee is that Vicentini will be and is their first choice option. They're looking for a little more upside in this side that has permission to rebuild under a first year of a new coach. You do not, now as fantasy coaches, we treat it a different way, but in an AFL coach situation, they've been watching and working with these players every single day since November. They have been coaching, they have been training, they have been drilling, they have been simulating, all these things. And all signs for Vicentini and also for McAndrew, let alone what has been publicly visible in the practice and community series games, they are the first choice ruck, and others are being jettisoned into support, not dual ruck structure setups, such as what we've seen at a Carlton. We in the fantasy community go, oh, it didn't work after 1 week. That's it. They're going to bring Sweet in. That's it. They're going to bring Robin. Friend, that's not how AFL clubs work. They may make that change after rounds 3, 4, 5, after they're like, we thought this would work. We've given it multiple chances. Now we're going to correct. So I don't forecast. I'm very happy to be wrong. I've been wrong a lot in my life, but every indicator suggests that you can move with a level of confidence. And even if it's not, it's 2 trades. Fix it. Jog on. It's not going to be the thing that costs you winning or losing the season.
If Adelaide wanted to play Riley O'Brien, they wouldn't have played Toby Murray as the second ruckman on the weekend. If Port Adelaide wanted to play Jordan Sweet, they would have found a way to get him in over instead of an Ollie Lord or a Whitlock or a Ram. It seems to me that it's pretty clear that these two teams are going to shake up their ruck stocks, and they're going to provide us with opportunities as fantasy coaches that we should not ignore. And I think that that is just the biggest thing. If you decide that you don't want to go down this pathway, I completely get it, but don't just write it off without looking into it yourself.
And I think that's the key, isn't it? We've got these last kind of window of times. We're about to get some actual data with opening round and player movements of prices to start to scope and scale out. This is your last sort of 24 hours to go, if this, then that, if this, then that, before the hammer starts to drop and it becomes impossible to maneuver around it. Play around, try everything, clear your team. Don't rebuild it off a faulty narrative. This is the time to start working with real, actual data points, not the, oh, I haven't considered that. Because if you haven't considered it, you might be putting yourself in a hamstring that you don't need to do. Hey, Mini, always a pleasure talking fantasy footy with you. Cannot wait for the live show in Melbourne this Sunday afternoon, straight after our Shiva drafts. We are both going to be drafting and then jettisoning down to Wheat Wine and Whiskey to do the venue. I can't wait anymore. I just want it to happen. I'm just going to Red Bull my way to Sunday night. It's going to be awesome, mate. Can't wait to have you there, and appreciate all your work you've done for the coaches panel as always this preseason.
No, same to you. You've done a mountain of work so far this preseason. You're almost there. Your wife might be starting to talk back to you again soon and give a bit more time. She'll be happy to see you on the other end, but it'll be good to see you in person in a few days' time and be able to, appreciate that luscious hair in person once again.
Oh, get stuffed. There's always one. I'm fully embracing that it's going to happen. I had the owner of Wheat Wine and Whiskey when I walked in. He's like, I've never heard of the podcast. Let me go check out the podcast. And then I came down and checked out the venue before we signed the deal with him. He's like, you do have great hair. I'm like, oh, Remy, get stuffed. No, get out. I'm like, that's it. The contract's over. So anyway, make sure if you have enjoyed the preseason with us and you're in Melbourne, come on down, join the community. We're watching the game, be part of the live podcast, grab a drink, say hello. We cannot wait to meet you. If you're not in Melbourne, we wish you could be there. But don't forget, every single day for the rest of the preseason, we're dropping a video. There's that live show in Melbourne on Sunday afternoon. But over the next couple of days, I'm going to give you my SuperCoach and my AFL Fantasy team reveal of what it'll look like before opening round. Not going to share it publicly anywhere else after this. but you get to see it. Every single day we're dropping content. We're going to talk rookie ranks and a bunch of other things. Make sure you check it out. If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please make sure you do so. Click that button. It makes a huge impact for us. Like the video and comment below. Let us know your biggest takeaway from the community series and any changes you've made in your team as a result. Of course, inside the description of this episode are all the details to get your tickets to the show on Sunday here in Melbourne. Get your hands on some Coaches Panel merch. Become a Patreon. Get your draft ranks. The kit is there ready for you to roll ahead of your Shiva draft on Sunday, and also where you can get in touch with us across social media. Hey, friends, we're just a couple of days away from seeing you live in person in Melbourne, and just a few hours away from more content being dropped right here on the Coaches Panel channel.